Welcome to the Fit Dad podcast. I'm Brad Thompson. I'm joined by the ever so handsome Ryan Dutton. And today we're joined by Sam Newton, who is the founder of Gravitate Accounting. He's an all-round good lad, and he shares all his financial tips, his business cues, all sorts of stuff that he's done with his life and career. And it was an exciting one today, mate. I feel like you really came into your own with it.
Yeah, I think Sam was great. I'm not sure about me. I'm thank you for the handsome shout, by the way. I'm not sure you're right there, but I think it's been a good one today. I've really enjoyed him giving some advice about kind of like what I didn't realise with Sam actually is he's an accountant. He's not specifically a financial advisor, and he makes that very clear. But speaking from personal experiences, where he's put his money, things like that, it's good from parent to parents to know kind of where we should be putting our finances, what's potentially best for our future, for our kids, and what are the smart moves with your money.
I really like how he's a value-driven accountant. I said it a lot in that episode, but I felt like there's a lot of comparables between being a coach and being an accountant, which I never thought I'd say. But just his willingness to provide value, his willingness to help people out regardless of what position they're in. And he said it, if he can't help, he'll find someone who can.
Yeah, he's built his business based on the fact that he wants to dumb things down for the everyday person. And that's exactly what we do in our business, right? We study the books, we study the science, we have all these complex areas of the body and how it works and the intricacies of it. But our job is to get it to the point where the average Joe can understand it. And was it you that was mentioned that if you can't explain something to a 7-year-old, the chances of you explaining it to an adult are very slim?
The hard thing is with money, finances, is there's a lot of emotional ties to it. So what we're forgetting with a job like Sam's is, he's a leader, he's a manager, but also the level of ability to personalize stuff. And he said it, he's an open book. He'll just blurt stuff out sometimes and give the value before they've paid, for example. But he's like, that's my job. That's what I need to do.
Yeah, he gives a great shout on a book as well. Do you remember what that book was called?
No, I don't. I feel like I should.
Yeah.
But there's a cliffhanger right there.
Yeah. Another reason to keep listening.
Yeah. But no, I'll be honest, what do you think your biggest take-home message was for Sam? Because for me, it was always, two things. For me, it was, I suppose, the monthly things that parents can do in order to help out with, just to get themselves organised. And my second one is he stitched up my little brother who I used to manage, which I enjoyed. So yeah.
Good question at the end.
Yeah.
Just a little bombshell at the end. The biggest thing for me was probably when he went to a talk and he got the advice of give as much value to the questions that people want.
It was very much like they ask, you answer.
That's right.
Yeah,
they ask, you answer. And that was the name of the seminar he went to. And he said it was at a time when maybe the business was kind of just out in a little bit of a slump, shall we say. And he went to this seminar and he came away with this idea of right, any questions that people have, I'm going to really highlight that and go all in on answering it. And whether that's in a blog post, a LinkedIn post, I'm going to answer the questions that people really want. And again, it all comes back to value. He's provided so much value. And I don't go on LinkedIn that much. I'm not sure about you, but I've seen Sam on there and he is getting a lot of traction with his posts, and there's a lot of interactions with things he puts out. Some of it's kind of, your typical accountancy talk, but he's man into his fitness as well. This guy's, got run clubs that he kind of is part of and partakes in, and he's a really good all-rounder, isn't he? Great dad, good businessman, got a great ethos on value and building a good company, and he's into his fitness, so he's got all the pillars that we really respect in kind of guys.
And great glasses as well.
Great glasses,
yeah. Great glasses, yeah. He's got some great glasses.
Yeah, a bit Harry Potter-esque like yours, actually, I would say.
Mine, you say. Should we get into it?
Yeah, let's go. Enjoy it, and we'll see you at the end.
Yeah, like I said, if you are enjoying the podcast, please rate, subscribe, pass it on to someone who, I'm going to say, probably needs help with money, or maybe is a fledgling business who maybe you can point them in the direction of Gravitate.
Yeah, send them over. Cheers, guys. Enjoy. Sam Newton, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
Really appreciate you coming on today. We want to pick your brains on a few different things. I think mainly around, obviously, finances. That's where your specialism is.
Yep.
Do you want to give people a bit of a context as to who you are, what you do?
Yeah, cool. So my name's Sam Newton. I set up Gravitate Accounting. I think it's 2019. So worked in a few different accountancy practices. I'm really set up to try and break the mold and the stereotypes of accountants. We get a bad rep for being dull and boring and stuff like that. So and it's not always the case. But also a lot of the setup of a typical accountancy firm makes you react rigidly. So an example is where previous practices I've been at, they make you clock your time in 5-minute intervals. So it almost gets you in that really rigid mindset of, every 5 minutes I've got to write down what I did in that 5 minutes and stuff like that. So we don't, and it's like, so the process is timesheets, and no one likes them. Everyone gets to the end of the week, thinks, oh shit, I haven't written it down. What do I do? Make it up. So the logic behind them is you can track time and charge people for the time that they've used your services, or at least be able to assess, are you within or out of a budget? But it's just mundane, and the fact that it's known that most people just end up making them up, that it deems it pointless. And so as an accountancy firm, we don't charge for time. We quote for a service and we deliver that service kind of thing. So it's just trying to do things a little bit differently that will, like I say, break the stereotype and get people thinking differently and acting differently. So we're more about, like I say, adding value. I mean, we have like 3 pillars. So it's sort of like collaborate. We want our team to all collaborate closely with the clients we work with. Automate. So obviously we're in an age now where there's a lot of technology in our industry. I say this quite a bit. We go to once a year, there's an event called ZeroCon, which is an accountancy convention. Sounds horrendous to the average person.
I spent 5 minutes with my accountant. I'm like, I'm out of here now. I'm done. It's just a tech company now. So a lot of the stuff we're doing is all about tech. So the automation piece is huge. Like I say, if we can create ways of you to automate and streamline that bookkeeping process, so you don't have to worry about your accounts are all there waiting for you at the end of the year. That's important. And then optimizing your tax position, because at the end of the day, that's what everyone cares about. Like you can talk them through their accounts and stuff like that, but the last thing and the key thing they always want to know is how much tax they've got to pay for the company or personally, kind of thing. So how much are you saving? That's
what that's what everyone wants to know. Which you mentioned about giving value, and I think us as coaches, we appreciate that. And one thing that me and Ryan always do a bit of research. So we've done some digging, figured out a bit of your ethos, heard you on a few other podcasts as well. And one thing that you mentioned was, I suppose, the benefit of turning really good people into good accountants rather than the other way around. Do you mind talking us through that and why that's a big ethos of yours?
Yeah, I think, like I say, because we're so, like, we push this collaboration piece so much, like we want we want to almost form part of our clients' finance team. So I mean, we a typical accountant will do year-end accounts or personal tax returns and stuff like that, but we do like push it a bit further. We do like outsource finance functions, so we can be the finance function. So we've got like a pub in Nottingham that's turned over a few £1 million, and we run the whole finance function from our office because of the technology we use and stuff like that. So we're part of their team. We have WhatsApp conversations with them, and then we go up to something called our outsourced finance director services. So if a business is like, okay, I'm growing really quickly, I don't know what I need. I just need someone to relieve me of these finance stresses, because like I say, I just want to focus on growing my business, but it's a big business now. So we go in and sit in as their finance director. And so to be able to do both of those style roles, we need to have the people who can have those conversations and aren't afraid. So that means from a recruitment perspective, we'll always recruit people first, is what we say. And then, like you say, because if you go down the recruiting someone who's technically got a great CV, you can't train them to be a good person and a good people person, and there's a time and a place for them, of course, and we probably will have some of the people to those, but the kind of roles the majority of our accountants and what they're doing is more important than to have those interpersonal skills. And then, like you said, they can learn the accountancy skills, and we can train them up from that perspective.
Quite a big team now as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's gone a bit mental. There's no like master plan. So yeah, we started 5.5 years ago, like I say, just to do that. I mean, after about 6 months, it felt like I was a bit of a consultant, because I was doing some outsourced finance director work. I was working for a couple of clients in-house as their finance function, and it all relied on me. And so I sold half the business to my business partner, and with a plan to build something scalable around it. And that's what we did. And then yeah, we've gone up to 30 staff now in 5 years. So it's a bit mental, but it's good.
It's terrifying.
It still is. And it's not. I don't feel like I'm certainly not managing 20 people. We've got such a good team. And it is, like I say, it goes back to the people all the time. But we have a really good sort of central team who are so important to business. Then we've got like what we call client finance directors, like I say, who do that kind of work. And we've got 4 or 5 of those, but even the layer below those guys are amazing talents as well. So like because of that, at the minute I've basically moved into I've sort of do a bit. I've got one large client left really, but then I look after a lot of the sales and marketing side as well, which obviously is sort of the generally exciting side.
Hence why you're here.
Yeah. And then sort of like me and my business partner sort of have an oversight over the business as well. So
it's nice to step back though a little bit now and watch it kind of unfold and working more on the business rather than in the business, which is, I think, scalability is so important.
That's a dream, and that's what everyone talks about getting to. And I'd say, like, I'm still working like mad hours, like, and I don't know if it's like because I love it or because I'm scared of stepping back, or I don't know why, but I still like I've got 2 kids, 2 and a 4-year-old, so my life is get up with them, spend as much time with them as possible, go to work when they're at nursery or at their grandparents, and then get back, spend another few hours with them, and then normally at night I jump back on and just get my laptop out and sit in bed. I'm not sure my missus is overly happy, but I think she understands it. She's in sort of a fast scaling business as well, so I think we have a bit of that understanding.
Talking about obviously away from work, you talk about kids, family, massive part of your life. What else do you do? Like, what are you into? I think you mentioned on the podcast that you like fitness, bit of fitness fanatic. Talk us through some of the kind of things you do outside of work.
I wouldn't go as far as a fanatic, and that's because I'm fairly active on social media, LinkedIn. I feel like I may maybe post about fitness 2 times or 3 times a month max, and people are like, I think they expect me to be some kind of like machine, which is not the case. Like I basically do fitness to be able to enjoy food and drink. To be fair, I think I just want to maintain, maybe get a little bit healthier. I just have this like buffer where when I get close to like November, December time, I just get close. I'm like, this is uncomfortable. I need to ramp it up and go back down. Running is a good, an amazing release for me. Obviously, you've interviewed my brother and stuff like that, and
Ollie's been on the podcast.
Ollie Newton's been on the podcast, and he obviously talks about how running like saves his life and stuff like that, and I can see it, and I know why. Back in the day, I was a good footballer back in the day. I was captain of Newcastle University first team. But I did my cruciate in my last year. Came back to Sheffield, did the rehab, and then did my other cruciate in my first fitness session back for a new team. Wow. So I did both my cruciates. So I've had a rough ride with that, but then I didn't get. I carried on. I did the rehab again, and I carried on playing football for a few more years and all that stuff. And then it wasn't until last year, 2 years ago, training for the Sheffield Half, I did my knee again for the first time in ages. It wasn't. I think I had to end up having half my meniscus taken out, which I hadn't before, and I was out for 3 or 4 months, and that's when I realised how important running was. And I remember running, just going on my normal run and just having, like, almost celebrating just being able to run again, because that 4 months was tough. And I had a 1-year-old at the time. I think after the morning after I did what I did, it was playing football, of course. And I remember I had to pull myself down the stairs to try and catch up with him. And I cried because I was just like, I can't, being mobile is so important to me, like with my kids and being able to play with them, with the fitness side, but also work. I need to be able to get around and stuff. And so so it is just having fitness is so important.
You take it for granted, don't you?
Yeah,
like being mobile, using your body. And you preaching to the choir, because obviously this is what we do. But we get people coming to us not because they're injured, but because they've really let themselves go and they can't really see a way out. And you see their eyes just like glimmer as soon as they start being able to do things with their kids and their families and run up and down the stairs without being like sweating like a pig. It's a nice feeling, and then it just builds from there. And you get to the point where you've probably been quite active and in sports teams most of your life, I would imagine. But imagine finding that at age 35. It's a really cool feeling, like, oh shit, I can do all the things that everyone else can do now.
Yeah, most people we find come to us because they think they want to look better, whereas actually they actually want to move better, feel better. That for me is the biggest benefit, because people can play with the kids, they can run around.
Yeah,
it is unbelievable.
And I think we were speaking before the podcast, you've got your business runners.
Yeah, Sheffield business runners.
Amazing.
Yeah.
How did you set up? Was it just a group of guys that were in business, wanted to keep fit?
Yeah.
How did that start?
So that started December year and a bit ago. So, and it was a case of one of the people in there's sort of a networking community, and you'll know quite a few. Well, especially if you're out and about, you'll know a few of the people. And so a lady called Hannah Gerard, she runs like the Great Escape Rooms and All Star Game Show All Stars in town.
I want to try this.
Yeah,
I want to try this. Yeah.
So she just put a LinkedIn message, I think, between Christmas and New Year, like say December 23, saying, I want to achieve some goals this year. Does anyone want to like train for a half marathon or something? And we said, well, why don't we set up a group to hold us accountable? The first person to respond was me. The second person was a guy called Phil. He runs Unlimited Magazine, which is again just a business magazine / website. I think they've got a podcast as well, to be fair. And so we were the first three to respond. So I just set up a WhatsApp group saying, let's do this, and let's start running one night a week. And we had all this debate about what to do. I was like, let's just set a place, set a date, and see who turns up. And like, I think the first day, 8 people turned up, which was quite good. I think I dragged 4 from my office, to be fair. So we were literally half of it. And it is one of the benefits of setting it up is it starts in my car park, peddler car park. So it literally starts. But I mean, yeah, and then since it's just grown, like Hannah is like a ball of energy, and she goes to every networking event, and I think she promotes that more than she promotes her own business. Phil's obviously got loads of contacts as well, and I don't know, I was just sort of plugging away in the background doing the admin, and like I say, quite noisy on LinkedIn, so got a few posts on there, and yeah, I think there's 200 in the WhatsApp group. Now I think we must get 30-40 to some runs.
What's the distance? What are you guys running?
So originally what we did, just to be inclusive, we found like a mile loop around Kelham, and so we said, look, we can do 1 loop, 2 loops, 3 loops, it's up to you, just come down, and we'll always have a back marker, so there'll always be someone to pick up the last person. But then we also wanted to keep it going, so we had that as the start, and then it was quite clear that we had some good runners in there. So we've got one guy called James Biggins, who is like he runs Steel City Marketing. He's the fitness fanatic, I'd say. I think he won. He's a little bit older than me. I wouldn't say how old he is, but he's definitely a bit older. But he like won park run back end of last year, so he's like very
one part run, just one. Yeah,
Millhouse as well, where it's like 400 people who won it. So that is that level of like, cool. I think it's like 17 minutes. Maybe I'm doing it injustice, but he's that kind of 5k time. So he's a beast, yeah. And so we got him. Like he was involved from day one. To be fair, we were all like, so we had this sort of we have a group to plan it all, and we sort of like we need him because he is like he's part of an official running club, and he helps generate ideas. So we have like a longer run, so which is sort of goes around Hillsborough Park again, and then he brought in intervals as well. So it's sort of like, look, anyone can go out and do a 5k, but it's much harder to go out and motivate yourself to do some interval training or something similar. So like his sort of proposal like mid to end last year was like, why did like those people who want to push, and he knows all about your VO2 and all that stuff. He's like, if you want to push yourself, and this will help you for your 10Ks, half marathons and stuff like that.
He's a bit of a coach in the group.
And I know he wouldn't class himself as a coach, but he's definitely the brains of that.
Cool.
And so it was. We now do interval sessions as well, so it's sort of like people can either do the small loops, the long loops, the interval sessions. We had one guy come and do some well-being sessions as well, like a well-being run. So it's sort of like very low pace, talking about like what you should be thinking about when you're running and stuff like that. So it's evolved. We have quarterly socials, and it's just a good group of people with an interest in, like you say,
makes it fun as well. Like sometimes we see exercise as a very isolating thing, and it can be. A lot of people prefer that, to be fair. But also the power of community for showing up every week. Thinking you're kind of letting someone down a little bit, people are noticing if you're not going. It's a big motivator, isn't it? Every week for sure.
100%, yeah.
Sometimes that's all it takes, isn't it? Just someone messaging saying, "Are you at Runners tonight?"
Yeah,
that's all it takes.
And there's a lot of the WhatsApp groups pinging off probably too much. To be fair, we moved to one of them WhatsApp communities. Have you seen them?
Oh yeah.
And I don't know if that's better or worse right now. But like the logic was that you can, if you segregate it out to like. And there's like a banter like group within a group, basically. It means the people who are a bit like, I'm going to mute this chat now because there's just too much chat. And it's not horrendous. I mean worse with pals and stuff. But
my only exposure to the community side of WhatsApp is my dad tried to start a Facebook, a WhatsApp group between me and my brothers. Somehow started a community, and I've got no idea how to navigate. I go into it every time and I'm like, what's this section? This section. So my dad is very untech savvy. He's the one who exposed me to that. Love that.
So yeah, we've just moved to the community, and like you say, but it's great. It's amazing. Like I say, every Monday there's chat like which session do you want to do. Most Fridays, everyone's like, which park runs everyone getting to this weekend. And like I say, when you just see one person get out on a Saturday morning, do a park run, even if like I say, my kids do football on a Saturday morning now, so I can't make it, but I'm like. Get to lunch, and if the boys are sitting quietly, I'm like to my missus, like, can I sneak out and do a quick 30-minute run and stuff? So it is all about like that accountability and, like you say, showing up and getting it done.
I love that. Shall we get on to like some kind of finance stuff and things like that? Because obviously our audience, they've got parents. It's the Fit Dads podcast. So how much are you in the know when it comes to kind of investing? Do you do a lot of that in your business? Do you do a lot of it personally?
So as in investing in
just in various things, do you give advice to clients of yours, like this is where I think you should put your money to kind of not specifically be better in tax, but to kind of promote wealth, I guess, personal wealth. Is that something you advise on?
Yeah, so specific, like you have to be a qualified IFA to be able to give that kind of advice specifically. So like I say, accountants, we tend to do, like you say, preparing the accounts, but sort of advising businesses strategically, that tends to fall under the IFA stuff. But there's some like general stuff that we're talking to businesses about, which I think we're just allowed to do.
Sure.
So like, I mean, like, so investment side, like, I can even talk about what I do and what my business does. So so now, obviously with interest rates increasing, because for ages they were low and almost at nothing, we're talking to a lot of businesses about putting money in high interest savings accounts, and so like we work with there's a good bank called Aleka Bank who probably target bigger businesses, but also a company called Tide who I think that's quite common for a startup bank as well, and they have like high interest saving accounts, like paying 4 or 5%. So bearing in mind that up to about a year ago, the most you could probably get was 0 point something. Like if you've got some money, put it in one of those savings accounts and make your money make money for you kind of thing. Is because like you say, obviously it reflects the fact that the cost of living is increasing and stuff like that. So if your money's sat in an account and it's not invested, then you're losing money by the fact that all the costs are going up around you and your money's not doing anything kind of thing. So something as simple as, like say, speaking to your bank and saying, what is the highest interest you offer, or looking at one of those two are both what we call challenger banks and not high street banks, and maybe because they don't have high rental costs and have high staffing costs, because they're an online primarily bank, they can afford to offer their interest. So yeah, look around and see what interest is available, and like you say, get some money in there essentially.
Malta's place as always.
Trying to get involved.
Blessed. That's it. So we put some things on our story about, have you got any questions for yourself? And one of the ones was about pensions, things like that. There's a lot of bonuses if you pay into pensions and, tax reliefs. What would you advise your clients to do when it comes to pensions? Is there any good kind of private pensions to pay into, things like that?
Yeah, so I think, like I say, after making your money do something, pensions is probably the next most common thing that we talk about, and yeah, there's, so from a business side, if you own a limited company and you're investing in a pension, you get the tax relief on that. So essentially, if you had surplus £10,000 in your bank and you were paying tax at 19%, you could pay in that £10,000 to a pension, and that would save you £1,900 in tax. So you're instantly better off because it reduces your tax bill. So the cost to you, how we would see that is the cost to you is £8,100 because you've given up 10,000, but you saved 1,900 in tax, so 8,100, and you've got 10,000 invested, which is then growing as well. So that 10,000 you put in is going to grow over time. So you're instantly 19% up, and then you've got that growth over the lifetime of your pension.
Yep.
And then, like you say, an individual is slightly different because they've received the money and they've likely been taxed on that money. So HMRC essentially offer certain reliefs to people who then have money that's been taxed and invest. And the way that relief tends to work is increasing certain tax bands. So a lot of people talk about earning up to £50,270 as sort of that's your basic rate band. If you earn over that, that's when you're a high rate taxpayer.
Yeah.
But pension contributions, they basically say, okay, as a reward for contributing to your pension, we're going to extend that band and make it higher. So in that same example, if you put 10 grand in, it's going to increase that band. And again, it just means you as an individual are paying more tax but at a lower rate. And pensions, the key thing about pensions these days is they're way more flexible than they ever were, because a lot of people are like, I'm going to pay into a pension and that's it. Like, I'm never going to see that money again. I've got to wait till I'm 60, 70 or whatever the age is. And then that's when I'm going to see what's happened. But the key thing for now is if you build up enough money in that pension, you can use the do we want to stop or?
He's been a nightmare.
Yeah, we've just got Walter scratched on the door. Bless him.
He'll leave it in a second.
Okay. So the key thing is because of the flexibility now, like if you can build enough money in that pension pot, you can use it to invest. So like our dream, me and Mike, my business partner, is to build enough money in that pension pot to then afford a deposit for a mortgage. So what will happen is, I think you've probably got to get 25%. Again, that's not fact. So someone else looked that up or ask an IFA. But I think you have to get a bigger percentage as a deposit. But the plan would be to build up to like that 25% and then buy a property for the company to operate out of. And then
so you buy it through.
So now you actually buy it through the pension. So we would.
Okay.
So like I say, this is why there's way more flexibility in pensions. And so like you say, you're building up that pension pot, and then you're saying, okay, we're going to combine our two pension pots together, and we're going to use that to get a deposit for a mortgage, and then Gravitate will operate from there, and then all the rental income, so the rental costs from so at the minute we rent off a landlord, we don't own our property, and so we're paying him all this money per year because our pension will own the property we trade out of. The rent goes into your pension and it's increasing your pension.
Yeah. So you're basically paying yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Your business is paying
exactly that. Yeah. And the company's getting tax relief. So there's that's the things that people should be looking at trying to do. Like, don't be scared of pensions. They're not as scary as they used to be. And if you get into a point where you've got a significant amount in there, then the key thing is, like you say, probably get an IFA, a financial advisor, who can help. Because, like you say, I'm giving you an overview of what we're doing, but there's plenty more options.
Just touching on properties, we had a question about properties and whether that is the best thing to do with your money alongside pensions and investments. And if you go online now, there's so much conflicting evidence. There's so many people saying, don't own a home because of this, the housing prices are going to crash or they're going to go up, and people were scared. And then there's other people saying, no, it's the most sound investment you can have, it's only going to raise over time. And there's a lot of conflicting advice, especially for young people now who are looking to kind of get on the property ladder. What would you, advise is a strong word, because I'm trying to be very careful with my terminology, because I obviously don't want to get you in any trouble. But you're obviously, I'm assuming, the mindset of like, property is a go.
Yeah, so my views on property is like, so what my opinion, what happened was, like, people were cashing in and becoming really successful, almost making too much money out of property and the returns on that. So over the last 5-10 years, HMRC are really clamping down on it. So I would say, if you're going to do it, I wouldn't just do one or two. I think like you want to commit to it and build a portfolio, because I think at one or two, the additional stress, not knowing the process, having to understand the systems and stuff like that, I just think you probably won't get the return and you'll probably get fed up of it. So I think if you're going to do it, it is building a portfolio like 5 or even like double figures, where with the aim of doing that. Obviously it's easier said than done, but I'd definitely be on that mindset of you're not just going to do 1 or 2 just to make a bit of money on the side. I think once you want to learn and understand the process, and like we talked about setting up podcasts and stuff before this, like it's tough, isn't it? Like everything, like so much to learn. And so people will think, oh, it's just easy, but like I think unless you're going to properly commit to it, understand sort of the quirks of the industry and stuff like that, then there probably is better ways and safer ways, maybe not safer, but alternative ways of investing, like the pensions, like just using ISAs and high interest savings accounts and stuff like that. But if you're going to commit to it, like one of the big things is running it through a limited company. Well, I'd say there's 2 ways of looking at it. If you're going to buy houses up, do them up and sell them, I'd probably own them personally, but on the basis that, especially if you're going to live in them and not do too many. Getting a bit complex here. Yeah. But essentially, if you're going to live in a house, do it up over a few years, and then potentially get to the point where you're going to sell it,
flipping them basically.
Yeah. Then it's worth doing it personally, because if you own the house, if that's your only house, you live in it, you get something called principal property relief. So any gain you make on that, you won't pay any tax. So if you buy a house for 100 grand, live in it for a couple of years, do it up, and it doubles in value because you spent 20, 30 grand, but also you've obviously, the natural market has increased. There's no capital gains tax payable on that because you own it personally and it's your only house. If you owned that same property for a business, bought it for 100 grand, spent 20 grand on it, and then it grew another 80 grand in value, the company, because it would have to pay corporation tax on that.
Yep.
And so I would say if that's your game, then own it personally. But I suppose you can't set out with the aim of flipping houses because now HMRC have clamped down on that, and they're saying you're literally just doing that. It's now become a trade. It's not a natural activity. It's a trade. Your trade is buying and flipping houses. So
it's tricky when you put the name under your house and you are potentially living in it. I remember my hairdresser did that for a while. Yeah. So they would buy a house, really run down, do it up. After 2 or 3 years, move on and just keep doing that same process. Yeah. They did it like 5 times, I think. It's tricky, I guess, trying to get litigation on that, because what time frames is the cut-off point? Like, how much can you do it up by? How much can you sell it for before you start taxing people on that? There's a lot of murky water still.
It is, and that's why I say, like, don't go in with that so your main money maker kind of thing, but like do it naturally and don't, I think, like,
so if you're gonna naturally kind of like, if you genuinely want to go into the property game of like buying, selling, flipping houses, doing them up, you think doing it personally
until you get to that point where you're like, clearly, okay, I can do this as a trade and make good money and pay the tax on it.
Okay.
Like if you just, it's almost like, because you can't fall in love with your house because you're doing it, you're building it to sell it kind of thing. And I know people who are like that. Like for me, I've always like, I'm doing it because I want to live in this house forever. And then move house and like that. Yeah. I think the key defining thing is it can't become a trade. The moment it becomes a trade, you want to be like, okay, I'm going to set up a limited company and I'm going to do it through that. But I'm going to commit to doing it as a job. And
maybe you've got 2 or 3 on the go now.
Drop your main job and focus on and put some time and effort into it, kind of thing. Because the whole concept of flipping. So basically, what used to happen is you used to be able to live in a house for a day, and then you'd get the relief for a longer period of time, months. So what people would do, maybe even years, like it predates when I was heavily involved in the tax side. So you'd have high wealth people who would once every X months or X years move into a house, and then they move in, move out, and then they've got the relief will carry forward.
Right.
So and like all the changes over the last 5-10 years have just stopped that kind of activity basically. So if you're just doing up houses as a non-trade, do it personally. If you're going to turn that into a trade, I'd put it in a company just because of protection as much as anything else. And then also, if you're going to buy properties to rent out, I'd also say limited company now, because the problem with doing it personally is obviously that when you're in that game where you're renting out property, sort of the one of your biggest costs is mortgage interest. So you can't. So say if you have your mortgage is £600 a month, there's £500 is capital repayment, as in the loan repayment, and then £100 interest. You can, in a limited company, you can offset all that £100 interest against your income. But in a as a sole trader now, they've limited how much you can offset because people are doing too well out of it, essentially. So they limit it down to a maximum of 20%, where even if you're paying tax at a higher rate, you can't claim the full relief. And that's another key thing for people in the property game. We have a lot of people who come to us and say, well, my income is less than my outgoing, so I don't need to pay any tax on it. But if a large proportion of your outgoings are capital repayments on a loan, you can't offset that against your income. And I think people are a bit like, well, as far as they're concerned, it's money in, money out. But really what's happening is they've borrowed 100 grand and every month or whatever, they're paying £500 against that loan. That's not on your P&L, that's on your balance sheet, or that's separate. So people who think, oh yeah, I can offset all of my mortgage repayment against my income, you can't. And so that's really
it
risky.
works the way around. I've told you this before, but I did exactly that. So I set up a limited company, bought property through that. I loaned the limited company money from my own personal finances. But what I didn't realise was I can take personally money out of that as a repayment to me because I've lent it to the company.
Yeah.
But the company can't use that as an expense.
Yeah, correct, yeah.
Which I didn't realise. So I do pay obviously more than I probably would like to in corporation tax because I can't, use that loan repayment as income essentially for the business.
No, that's spot on, yeah.
Like Ryan said there about getting the right information, I'm well aware about there's a lot of trust involved in discussing finances, discussing, whether it's an IFA, whether it's with an accounting company. How would you recommend somebody not build up that trust, but how can you ensure that the person you maybe be trusting with this information or this questions that you've got or the direction that you want your money to go, how can you make sure they are legit or somebody you can trust?
Yeah, it's a good question, that, because as a business, we sort of, and we're not overly pushy on qualifications, because the easy answer to that is go to someone who's qualified. But for me, like I've worked with amazing accountants who aren't qualified. Like I scraped through my exams. Like I went to university, got a 2.2. I went and then did. So you do professional exams. The pass mark's 50. I think I did 4 or 5 exams and didn't get over 52, 53. Like I scraped through exams, but it doesn't make me not a good accountant. And I think that the part of me that thinks I was always a couple of % off failing makes me think like it's not the be all and end all. Some people just aren't made for exams, kind of thing. So
I feel you there.
Yeah, it's like it's tricky for me to sit like, because the easiest, most obvious answer to that question is get someone who's qualified. But I've met some incredible accountants who aren't qualified, but what we would call qualified by experience. And I've equally met some dreadful accountants who have that ACCA, ACA, CIMA next to their name, kind of thing. So I mean, so as an example for us, as a new business, Google reviews are important to us. Like we've got the most Google reviews of any accountants firm in Sheffield by some way, I think now. There was one other lady who had a wicked business, but she sold out. So I think that's left us at the top. I think there is a couple getting close, actually, to be fair, but it's a good sign. You can't, obviously we ask people to leave the reviews, but we can't block anyone leaving negative reviews. So if we were to be operating like cowboys, then someone would call it out, kind of thing. So I think you've got to look at external resources and review sites to say, look, are they doing what they say they do?
I think it's important to speak to numerous different ones as well. Like the parable to our industry is we encourage people to go and speak to other coaches and say, see who resonates with you, see if their values, their ethics, their reputation. For us, it's results, but from an accountant's perspective, it's customer experience, it's like you said, Google reviews. So that one of the key questions that I got from people, like who do I trust? How do I know who to turn to?
Yeah.
And I feel like you've got to the bottom of that.
Yeah, and like you say, it is all about building up that relationship. I mean, if anyone ever wants to message us and say, look, which IFAs do you recommend? We work with, we've got clients, 6 or 7 clients, and we can say, look, we work with all these guys, they're sound, they know what they're doing. Here's a list of them. So, like I say, I mean, the easiest way to contact me is on LinkedIn. If anyone contacts Gravitate Accounting on Instagram, again, we can share those contacts. And we're like you, we're not perfect for everyone. So like, we don't say you have to come to us as an accountant. It's like, people need an accountant for different reasons. Like say, we can't collaborate closely with our clients. We can't focus on time and automating if we're going to be bottom of the pricing list kind of thing. We're more expensive than other accountants, and we know that, and we're comfortable with that because of the value we add. And then it's down to us to showcase the value we add and continue to add value.
Back it up, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Or people will leave us. And so, like, we're especially, like, we talk about it a lot with the outsourced finance director stuff. It's because they could have a higher finance director, or they can come to us. But the key thing with us is every day we need to prove our value, because we've got no contract, we've got no employment rights. So if we do a shit job, they can kick us out like straight away. We wouldn't tie anyone into anything on the contract. So we've got to be constantly adding value. And
I think it's quite a nice pressure to put yourself under, though, because it means you can't let the ball slip with someone. You've got to make sure that every client's getting the best value. And I think that in my own business, I think
there's a lot of comparables, actually.
Yeah, so many. Like there's a lot of coaches out there, a lot of people they can go with. I'm probably not the cheapest, but I like to think when someone comes on board, they go, oh, now I know what I'm paying for. I get it. I understand it. Like there's all these things that you don't see on the surface level. And I think that any good thriving business is like that, though. They want to provide as much value as possible. It doesn't matter what industry they're in.
Because me and Ryan talk a lot about mistakes that people make. Is there any particular money mistakes or finance mistakes that you find a lot of your clients will come to you with, or any common mistakes that people can avoid?
I'd say like that is definitely the one we talked about earlier about offsetting your mortgage capital payment against your income is a common one. What other common mistakes do we see? I mean, like if I was setting up a new business or even a sole trader business, I'd 1,000,000% set up a bank account day one. Like there's nothing worse than the clients who try to run their business and their personal out of one bank account, because it takes them ages to unpick it at the end of each year and kind of stuff. So like that is the top tip for any business. Like even before talking to an accountant, like if you're going to do it, make sure you're running through a separate bank account.
And you can. I mean, before I went limited, I was self-employed. Self-employed, yeah. And you go from having your own personal account, but you can set up a sole trader account. It's not like it's still associated with you. It's just through, like I do it with Lloyd's Bank. So Lloyd have a personal account, have the business side, and you can set up the two, which is it's really handy as well. Like just so you're not, like you said, picking it apart, going through your statements, seeing what you can claim and can't claim. And
I'd also probably try and get in the position of paying yourself something as well, like because again, otherwise you're like, oh, I need some money. All my money's in my business account. I'm just going to take it out of there and take it out of there and take it out of there. So we have clients who run it like, again, even through limited companies, they run all the day-to-day spending, and maybe they just split it for chance. So like maybe my accountant will allow this kind of thing, maybe they'll allow that. But it's just like the problem is all we would do is say, okay, similar to what you were talking about earlier, that would go to your director's loan account. So obviously you put money in, so you had a positive director's loan account, so the company owed you money. But the problem is if people are just spending, so we have to say to the client, okay, you've been to the pub, supermarkets, this, that and the other, and every year you've spent 10 grand. So now we're going to have to say the company is paying you a dividend, not to give you 10 grand, to pay that off. And so they're like, they might have to pay tax on that at 33.75%. So they're like, okay, well, I haven't received this cash, and we're like, no, because you've spent it on you personally and not on your business. So that's another one where the director's loan account thing is something that people who have a limited company struggle to get their head around. But it's basically saying that is the equivalent of your personal stuff that you're putting through the business, and so that's why I'm saying it's so key just to get into that mindset of like, okay, my business makes even at the start, like £1,000, £1,500 a month, and I'm going to transfer across 800 quid of it, and just getting that mindset of that is you paying yourself, because
it's your wage, basically.
Yeah, exactly, because there's nothing worse than the people who just keep dipping into their account, because they never really will actually understand how much they're taking out, because they're just dipping in and dipping in and dipping in, and then even as the business grows and it's become successful, they're still just using it as something they can draw down on, and naturally the bigger scale you're doing that on, the more tax implications you're putting on yourself. You
can get into a real hole. That's literally the chat I had with my accountant this year about kind of those loans and directors' loans, and he was telling me some horror stories about, like, he was saying it's really weird as well, because you see it on a kind of front level basis where you've got someone coming in with like an 80 grand director's loan, or they're driving around the Porsche. I can see where that 80 grand's going. And I think it's there's some scandalous stuff, as I'm sure you know, that goes on out there, and people don't run businesses as legit as they should. But it does come back to bite you in the ass at some point. You just can't escape it.
And like you say, so now if you have a director's loan account that's overdrawn, again, because of that kind of example, HMRC now tax companies on that, so they'll say we're going to tax you at 33.75%. So you either take it as a dividend and you'll pay whatever dividend rate you're going to pay on that, or we're going to tax the company. And what it's called, it's like a withholding tax. So it's sort of like if this year you owe the company 10 grand, we're going to take over £3,300 off, but if the next year it comes down to £1,000, well, you only owe us 330 quid, so we're going to give you back the difference. So it's sort of like almost like they're holding that money as like a loan from you to cover the fact that you're not paying tax legit by drawing that money out. So it's definitely another one we see that is obviously more from the limited company side, people getting in trouble with, and especially with bounce back loans, because you get a bounce back loan, and then you take the full money out, then you instantly creating that problem, and that's what obviously is probably still now getting tidied up. And when they talk about the debts and stuff in our economy, a lot of it's on the backlog from that, which is now people aren't able to pay that back.
How tricky was COVID to navigate? Because there was a lot of things coming in over COVID, loans for companies and things like that. When you mentioned loans, that's the first thing I thought about COVID. And I know some people who did some pretty dodgy stuff during COVID. We'll go into that in detail.
Probably good.
But was that tricky as an accountant to navigate that, and the new kind of obviously maybe new laws that were coming in around the kind of loans and things like that?
So set the business up in July 19. September 19, raised our first invoice, because I had I was in my notice period at work, and then COVID hit that January. So it was like 3 months really into trading. My business partner, we'd already had the conversations, and he was going to join. Well, he did join, but at one point I had to call him like, are you still doing this? Because like the whole world's changed since we made a plan. And like even down to the point of he was like one of the top achievers at his work. He was at like Eurocell, so a massive international company, thousands of employees and stuff like that, and he was sort of number in the top 1% of bonuses, like not amount of bonus, but like I think it basically says you will earn X bonus, and the higher up that rankings you are, the more you'll get of that, and so he was like top 1%, so very well thought of, but he just didn't have, like that's what we call that going into industry. So you're an accountant in industry, as in for a firm. We're in practice, where we look after the accounts for loads of different industry firms, essentially. So we sit external generally, and he just didn't get that job satisfaction of being able to save some more money and stuff like that. And it was very repetitive, because every month he'd do a month end and then start the next month. And even though he was recognised as part of that, he never said like once a month or once a week someone would come up and say like, you're doing a really good job. He just knew he'd done well because of this annual system, basically. So a
lot of self-gain there, as opposed to
the
rewarding aspects of it.
And there is, because like there is, like obviously when we're saving clients money and stuff, there is that job satisfaction. So anyway, we agreed that he would actually, because they sort of needed him, he'd go back and contract for them as part of the thing. So it was nice for us as a business, because we could have been getting, I don't know, 4 or 5 grand like consultancy fees back from his old company, which would have just like steadied the ship. He would have come in, covered covered his wages. So we would have been like, we wouldn't have been having a massive hit to the business. But then they said, oh, during COVID, we've got to pull consultancy agreements. So it was a bit like, and then again, I'm asking him, like, are you sure you want to do this? He's like, I was still like 100%, like they've been one of the best things I've done, because it is lonely. Like, I know, like running a business on your own and, like you say, employing staff on your own, I couldn't imagine doing it. We are going down the coaching route this year, just because we've got to a level and we want to keep growing. And I think we probably need someone external, but if it wasn't for having Mike and Jonathan, my other business partner, for the last 4 years, then I would have got a coach way earlier, because it is just lonely. And like you say, you always feel like you're on your own and stuff. So, but yeah, so we still went ahead and did it. And then, like you say, it was just battling through like furlough and battling through like the loans and the grants that were available. And again, there was a lot of one of the
Banks
things
also stopped setting limited companies, didn't they? So, like,
a nightmare. Yeah,
people trying to start businesses and they can't.
So, like, we did, and to be fair, for me as an individual and growing a business, we a lot of accountants went into hiding and furloughed all the staff, because I think their logic was, we need to get to our computers in our offices, which we can't access because they had a lot of desktop stuff. We were building a cloud-based accountancy firm. So we were super extra noisy on LinkedIn, because we were like, okay, whatever knowledge we learn, we'll share it. So we were giving out the knowledge on LinkedIn. We were cloud-based, so anyone who's like, well, my accountant's gone, like, it's just not talking to me, what can you help? We could pick them up as clients and help them out.
So do you feel like your business actually grew a lot during COVID?
We definitely grew, but part of that was because it was the first year, and we were always going to pick up. Well, obviously, our growth in the first few years is like, if you look at it as a percentage, was huge, because. But there's always going to be the case. It's like, you can bend stats to, can't you, to be like, if we just talked about the first few years, like X% growth, it would be like insane numbers. But realistically, it's because we're brand new and we're always going to grow it, kind of thing. So, I mean, we did well out of it for sure, because, like I say, we were online, we were sharing advice and any knowledge we got, but also, like, there's a lot of part of like accountancy communities, like WhatsApp groups with people who are sharing best knowledge. So we were lucky to be part of those with, like I say, knowledgeable people who were teaming together, basically, and inputting their take on stuff, because it is translating. Like, a lot of our job is translating what the hell, like
what is the jargon,
what we announce and stuff like that. So
I'm going to switch up a little bit now.
Fire away.
Probably more on a personal level. What do you think to crypto?
What do I think to crypto? My worry, well, for me personally, it's sort of like, if I got into crypto, I would not be able to stop looking at it, and I'm too busy to be distracted, and that's why, for me, I do all my investments through an IFA, because I don't have to look. I don't know if my money's in the S&P, if it's in crypto, if it's in here. I tell him how much risk I want to take, and he monitors that for me, and that's what I see as one of the big values, because I just don't have the energy, like I say, in that last 5 years, the 2 kids I mentioned, Scale and Gravitate, basically pulled our house to shreds and rebuilt it, basically. And at times I've been on zero. I'm the treasurer of a golf club, and also the finance director for a company which moved up to like 3 days a week. So like, it's been intense, and so I've got to zero like a lot from an energy perspective, kind of thing. And I used to sit with Ollie, and he'd just be like, you just haven't listened to the last 20 minutes episode. I'm just like, I guess
I've got nothing for you.
Like,
we've all been there. You've not run a business well enough if you've not been there.
Yeah. No, so it's like, I just love spending time with him, but it was just one of them where it was comfortable sat there, just not even talking, just like being together, and like same with some of my pals and stuff. So, and I'm way past that now. And obviously, like you say, when we get to 30 staff, you shouldn't be there. But yeah, so for me, from the investing side, from crypto side, I'd have to. I've dabbled in it and it's not gone well, so I've got out of it quite quickly.
Yeah.
And so for me, I'd have to really understand it to go into it. And if I'm being totally honest, I don't get it right now. So
I hear some wild stories. It's something that a lot of the younger people are talking about now. And if you get into certain echo chambers, you can really be convinced that like this is going to make me my millions essentially. But I took on a client who will remain unnamed, but he did something pretty wild. He, at 57 years old, took out all his pension, put it into something called XRP. This was 7 years ago.
Right.
Massive risk at the time, but he has a friend in London who was a bit of a financial advisor, and he said, if you're going to do it in anything, put it into this. It has gone up. I think it's he put about 50 grand into XRP, and I think it's quadrupled now. So it's earned him way more than it would have earned him, like had he just kept it, in a normal pension pot. But it's risky, and he is constantly checking it all the time. And whenever he talks about it, there's always that air of nervousness in his voice because there's a lot of court cases going on around this particular cryptocurrency at the moment. They're in kind of court in America, and if they kind of get past this court case, it could either go boom. If they don't get past it, it could go quite poorly.
Yeah.
Some people love the risk, don't they?
Yeah.
Some people love that risk.
He's a real wheeler dealer by trade. He's a relatively successful businessman himself. Got a few businesses in Sheffield, but I just think about that whole scenario. How I couldn't sleep at night just knowing that all my money, most of it is in one random cryptocurrency.
And like you say, especially if there's one case, it's 50-50.
Yeah.
And so and it's just that unknown, isn't it? Like,
I think there's a lot of the maybe more sound investments, things like gold, stuff like that. Over all those things, personally, I think property is probably the soundest of the lot. You've got some bricks and mortar. All being well, if they don't fall down, anything happens. But I think it's it's generally long term a more sound investment. But it's like an investment. The more you gamble, the bigger the payoff, but also the bigger the kind of upset potentially.
And I think with the crypto stuff, like say, the people who are, it's got to impact your mental health, like being in that kind of, and like you say, and almost thinking, I feel like with crypto, it'll always be, I wish I left then, and I wish I got in then, like, why didn't I buy crypto just before Donald Trump came into power kind of thing. Like, and like, if you're in that, that'd be sort of where my mind would go at times. I would never just be comfortable. I'd be like, when is the optimum time to leave? And you're never going to find that because you've got to be in and out every minute, basically. So I just couldn't get comfortable with that. Another investment that I do is called VCT, so Venture Capital Trusts, basically. Then might need to Google that. So, but is it definitely trusted? It doesn't sound right now, but anyway, VCTs.
we'll go with it.
And so essentially, what I would do is, so a VCT, you're basically again, you can do it yourself where you invest in startups. But what I do is I invest in a portfolio of startup businesses essentially,
cool.
And HMRC essentially reward you for doing that. So they will say, okay, what we'll do is, because typically if you buy shares in a business, if it increases in value, you pay tax on the gain kind of thing, unless you put it through an ISA, which is what a lot of people will do, to be fair. But so with VCTs, let's say for round numbers, you're putting £10,000. In the year you put in £10,000, you save £3,000 off your tax bill. So you work out your tax. So whatever that number is, so if it's £5,000 is your tax payable, you'll get that £3,000 knocked off it instantly. So your £5,000 becomes £2,000. So you're already 30% up. If a VCT grows in value, there's no capital gain. They tend to pay a dividend. So like the ones I've invested in pay roughly 4 to 5%, which is quite good. Like I say, that's comparable to a high interest account. And you only have to leave it in for 5 years. So what I will do is I'll invest in a VCT, and I'm now 3 years into that. If I get to say year 5 and year 6, so I've left, so let's say to year 6, the money I put in year 1, I'm now in year 6, I can reinvest that and get the 30% again. Or if I continue to have, like say for that, in that example, £10,000 spare, I could put in a new £10,000 that I built up or earn, plus reinvest my year 1 £10,000, and so therefore my tax saving is based on a 20 grand investment, so it's 6 grand.
Interesting.
And it's risky, but it's like you can do it with company. Well, I do it from IFA, but I'm invested in one called Blackfinch, one called Puma. There's readily available information about it, but I get catalogues of what I'm invested in. So I'm invested in Lucky Saint alcohol-free lager and stuff like that. So it's those kind of businesses, and so you're investing in Blackfinch and Puma in those examples, and they're investing in these scale-up businesses basically.
I like the idea of some free lager.
I mean, there's that.
I haven't got any of that.
Not yet.
But sometimes when I'm buying it, I'm like, well, that's probably helping me buy. No, not 1p or something.
Yeah. I do exactly the same. I got heavily into stocks and shares during COVID because there was nothing else to do, and everyone was jumping on it. So I did that, and same thing. Like whenever I buy something from a company I invested in, I'd much rather go with that company as well. So it's let's see if he.
Your boat's all right.
Yeah.
I think you've probably gathered by now. So I'm someone who tries to like zoom out, look at like the bigger picture, and look for themes. And a mutual contact of mine and yours, I'll not name him, but he's a very, very clever man. He talks a lot about landlord mentality. So you mentioned a lot about property. You mentioned a lot about business owners investing back into startups. I love that side of things. I also think anyone who's wanting to grow wealth in that regard, my mindset's changed hugely about maybe having that landlord mindset, about almost being a landlord, professionally, whether it's for landlord from a business standpoint. You want to be the one to take that step back and lead. Is there any questions that you wish people would ask you more? Because I'm cautious that you must get tons of questions from the team, or is there any one that you go, your life would be so much easier if you just asked us this?
Not sure actually. It's a tricky one. I'd say you'll probably guess I'm a bit of an open book, and I can talk a little bit. So if anything pops into my head, even if it's like an initial interview, like initial prospect meeting with a client, I'm not one of those people who are like, I can save you X, Y, and Z, but this is what you need to sign up and all that. I just blurt it out, rightly or wrongly. And so a lot of the time it is me giving back from that side. So like you say, with the investment stuff, that's the kind of stuff I'm doing. And if I see a client with a good chunk of money in the bank, I'm like, okay, what are you doing with that kind of thing? So I suppose I'm always reversing that and giving them the information before they ask.
I think that's just person to person, being honest, knowing that you're doing those things, and there's some potential help that someone could have. Why would you keep that information to yourself? I think it's
just paying it forward a little bit, aren't you?
Definitely. One of the when we did sort of had a quiet period a couple of years into the business where we were like, it was a bit of a slump, and it was like we hadn't been through it yet, I sort of was like, what's happening with the business? Are we going to be all right, blah blah blah? And then randomly there was a guy called Marcus Sheridan who came and did a talk, and it's called They Ask You Answer. It's a really good book. It's a book now, but so he was in Sheffield doing a talk, and he's basically like says, if anyone asks you a question, realistically someone else is thinking that question as well. So why don't you answer it? Why don't you write a blog? Why don't you write a LinkedIn post and answer that question? And if you're giving away that information, people will naturally want to work with you. So that's how a lot of our business works, is like we operate on that mindset. So he owned like a swimming pool company in America, and his logic was, so that, again, it was when the housing market crashed and everything in America, what happened was everyone would remortgage the house to get the pool, but obviously, and that was like 90% of their sales came through that route, but because the housing market crashed, no one could remortgage the house and no one would buy pools, so his business was doomed basically. And he sort of had changed this mindset of They Ask You Answer, whereby any question that you got asked, he would always write a blog on it and stuff like that, and he just said it completely changed his business, even to the point where someone would ask him, okay, you're obviously a very good swimming pool company, what are the next best options and stuff like that. And so he'd write a blog on these businesses, but naturally, so say if we wrote a blog on Joe Blogg's accountancy as a good competitor to us, you should consider, his blog came up higher on Google than they did. So they would go onto his page to review, and he'd give an honest feedback. He wouldn't be like, oh, they're shit, don't go with them kind of thing. He'd be like, they specialise in this, they're good. But because his blogs was ranking so high by going through this process and just like putting everything down, like he ended up ranking so high that they'd be coming on his page to review the accountancy firm wants to go to, and then he would have a pop-up saying, what you're here for, do you want to talk about a hot tub kind of thing. So it's just and like so like that whole it gave me, I left that like 2 or 3 hour talk just thinking, wow, like we need to do this in a massive way. And it's only really now where we've actually hired a market manager who started with us this week, where we're probably in a position where we can really capitalize on it. Like my LinkedIn is all about that stuff, so if anyone asks me stuff, I will try and answer that question on LinkedIn. Obviously with numbers, and sometimes it's hard because you've always got someone who's trying to fire you down and stuff like that, so call you out for
just social media in general.
I mean, you sound like a very value-driven accountant, which I love. I absolutely love that. From like a day-to-day thing, like we know from working with clients, we want to give them daily actions that they can do, maybe monthly actions. Is there any monthly actions that you could maybe advise people from I'm going to call it financial health standpoint? Is there any healthy things you think people can do month to month to help them along?
I'd say like as a minimum, if you are maintaining an accountancy software, so if you're running a QuickBooks, a Xero, a Sage, a free agent for your business, then I would 100% recommend reconciling that each month, so keeping that up to date. So and then running the reports out of it. Like we work with all of those softwares now, but we built our business on Xero essentially. And one of the biggest ways we added value at the start was teaching people how to use Xero, because previous accountants would just say, here's Xero, go use it. Like
that was mine. Fortunately, I'm a little bit more tech savvy, so it's all right. But I do wonder how some people go.
I'd just say this is the best software on the market. Go, and so for us, it's like, well, that's not going to help, because like if you're just using the basic of Xero, it's an okay. It's got expensive now, but if you're not using all the functionality, you're not probably getting a return on that kind of thing. So, and another thing that is going to come in for individuals from April 26 is, right now, if you're a sole trader, you've got to submit your tax return once a year, and like I say, a lot of people will leave it till January time to do that. From April 26, you're going to have to submit something quarterly. So all the people who aren't on a similar thing to Xero, QuickBooks, free agent, Sage, by then are going to have to move towards that, because they're going to have to be submitting information quarterly, because HMRC aren't going to just allow you to submit one return a year. They want the money.
Is that more work for you guys?
But yeah, it is going to be. We don't have hundreds and hundreds of self-assessment clients, but our aim so this year is almost a year that precedes it. It's sort of like, look, this is your year to get on accounting software. If you're not going to do it, it's going to be stressful, and you might want to go to an accountant who's willing to guess it or estimate it, as opposed to us, we want to do the right thing kind of thing. So it's going to go from one submission to 4 and a summary submission. So like that is going to be a big game changer. And again, the best way to combat that is finding a way of doing your accounts monthly or even weekly.
I think to big up what Gravitate do as well. I mean, I've been into your office. I've sat down with Aaron. I'll shout him out. Actually, we're great. And he said about the quarterly meetups that you guys do, which I just think, how many people are going to benefit from that? Because you catch things before it gets really bad, and it's not just there's your year transactional. That's what tax you owe, and people go, oh my god, I didn't expect that. So I think you guys are very much ahead of the curve with that. Yeah, that sounds cool.
Yeah, we do try, and like you say, it's. We do think we know we can add value. Like we have like a pre-year-end tax planning meeting, which we charge probably not enough for, really, given the value. Like it's maybe a bit over 200 quid, but the instant savings we can give, just really quick tips. Like we tend to earn it back and X times more. So, but people will always see it as potential, us trying to upsell and stuff like that, when really it's sort of like, if we see you after your year end and you don't want to talk to us in that year, it's generally too late. There's not a whole lot you can do. Like we'd rather be meeting you in the year and before the year end to say, if you do this now, this will save you you can make pension contributions and I'll save you that in tax. Or you need a laptop, don't buy it on the 1st of next year, buy it on the last day of the current year, because you're going to get that tax saving in 9 months' time, not 21 months' time. That's just the difference between a day, and it could save you a few hundred quid if you invested in kit and stuff like that. So
it sounds like common sense, doesn't it? But actually, common sense isn't common. So I think experts like you to...
And I think like a lot of it is common sense, and a lot of it is, like you say, I think a lot of people think accounting is really black and white, but the more I see it, it's like there's people doing different stuff, and like it's all about taking advantage and but staying on the right side of it. And there is a lot of grey, unfortunately.
100%.
There used to be a lot more grey. I mean, my dad was an accountant,
okay.
So he, 20, 30 years ago, or 30 years ago, I think, used to work in a lot of the loophole sections and save people a lot of money.
Sweet. Might need to speak to him. See if any are still standing.
Well, he got banned from tax, actually, for not obeying some of the rules. But it was a funny time that I think he set up his own company based on certain loopholes, and then over the space of a few years, the government just cracked down, as they always do, on tax, and those same loopholes aren't there, and I think that's what they're trying to do, and that's what they are doing constantly, aren't they? They're constantly, every time there's some loophole, they want to cut down, property being exactly one of those things.
There's one at the minute where you can buy vouchers. So like, do you know, with like Amex, basically you get points.
Yeah.
So a lot of business owners, and again it is sensible, is using a credit card for your business expenses and then getting the points, and then so you can get business Amexes. We use something called Capital on Tap, and we get 1% cash back. So I was speaking to a business owner the other day. Obviously, it's a successful business, but he's putting 100 grand a month through a credit through his business, and none of it goes on the credit card kind of thing. So even like in that example, he could get 12 grand a year just by using this credit card facility. Obviously, depending on assuming all the transactions allow a credit card, but so, and obviously on the back of that you get points, and so if I have a business Amex and I get points, I can use them personally, and there's no tax implications. Obviously you can feel it's a little bit, you can feel why people are a bit upset by that, because it's sort of like you are getting a benefit for something your company's spending money on. So anyway, there's these companies who have just took that to a whole new level and said, if you buy a grand's worth of marketing from us, we will give you access to a marketing platform, which isn't worth a grand, it's just worth nothing, and we'll give you £900 in points to use. And so that's a prime example of someone seeing a situation like the Amex and the Tesco club card point situation and thinking, I'm going to make a business out of exploiting that to the nth degree, and whereby you're spending £1,000, or I think you literally spend £1,000 on access to a platform. So you save £200 in that process, but they give you £800 out of the business. So you're making money because you're getting £800 of points, but you can spend on anything, and you're not paying any tax to get out of the business. Well, you save some tax.
There was a similar thing in Amazon vouchers, wasn't there? The people doing it for Amazon vouchers, where they were exchanged Amazon vouchers, and that was tax avoidance, basically.
I mean, what you can do, like for your team and for directors, you can take like for the directors of a company, you can take 6 £50 gifts per year called trivial benefits, and that's a nice easy win because every director can do it. So we say to directors every quarter, get yourself 50 quid, and then your birthday and Christmas, and then so it reminds you to do it. You get 600 quid out of the business, you actually save the tax on it, and that's fine. So, and again, that'll be a prime example of someone back in the day probably were like, oh, we owe you a bonus, we owe you £1,000, shall I get your watch or something instead, because that will avoid tax. But so again, they had to say, okay, we're going to limit gifts to £50. But again, it's a nice little, we talked to all of our clients in our pre and tax planning meeting about that, to say like, look, you'll save the 20 or 25% tax on it as well, and you've got 300 quid to go and treat yourself to something. Just buy, as long as you buy 6 £50 vouchers, not one £300 voucher, it's all good.
Love that.
So it's just little bits like that where you've got to take advantage of what you can, because like say small businesses like have been properly clamped down on the benefits of running a limited company over like the last, like say 10-15 years. So take the small wins.
I'm conscious of your time as well, mate.
Same.
But Any last questions you had for Sam?
I have quite a selfish, like trivial one. Obviously, my little brother Bobby, he's an accountant. I think you were his gaffer. Can you stitch him up for us, Sam? Is there anything he did, like first day? Did you send him for any tartan paint or spirit level bubbles?
Bobby. No, I honestly love your brother. He's an absolute legend. He, like say, he's the kind of person who, like you say, you want to be working with. So, I mean, like, let's think. What do we? I mean, at one point, like, so we, the company we worked for, were again like very techie business, and so, like, basically Bobby's whole job at one point was just to scan on receipts, because we'd be getting all these businesses who hadn't quite converted to like cloud-based software. So, like, he's literally all day every day was just everyone who would send us the boxes of receipts, instead of us just saying to them, look, your job now is to take a photo of these receipts and send them us, they still drop them off. So it was just in that early education piece. Like now, for all our clients, we're like, well, you either pay us to do that, which should cost you quite expensive, or you just do it yourself, which is way easier. And so, like, we give them the technology to take a photo of a receipt, or if it's any invoiced in, they just forward the invoice to a software and it reads it all. And so, like, this is in the early stages of that. So, I mean, I think at one point we joked about just sending Bobby around on a bike, just going around with a scanner, getting everything done. But
sounds like an apprentice job, that.
I mean, he stayed at my house once after a Christmas do, I think, because I was just walking home with him and he was punching bus stops and stuff. So I was like, Bobby, you need to stop punching bus stops. So, like, and I think we must have been close to mine. I was like, you're probably not in the right mindset to go home, pal. Just literally stayed on my sofa.
So he's always stayed quiet about that one, Sam, believe it or not. Yeah, but there we go. I've got my ammunition. There we go. Publicly to the world. Ryan, have you got anything serious to ask?
No. I think you've really highlighted loads of things that our audience had asked, and me personally, I wanted to know when it comes to tax and how money works just in general. I think it's really been informative. So yeah, thank you, mate. Perfect.
Yeah, and I think for me, just to sort of sign off and blow a bit of smoke, really, because Gravitate, they're brilliant. I'm really, really impressed with what I've seen, and if I was in that position to take the step, 100%, you're top of my list, because it's
a lot of people speak really highly, like Pete from the Fitness Trucker. He spoke really highly of you guys. Said you're very forward thinking. So you've obviously got this great reputation now it's building in Sheffield for sure.
Love that. Where can people find you, Sam?
Yes, I'd definitely say LinkedIn. So my LinkedIn, the company is on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, moving towards trying to do some YouTube stuff as well. So
TikTok, you don't get many accountants on TikTok.
I try to get roped into some stupid stuff. I can't
wait to see your TikTok videos.
You should. I got properly schooled on one where they made you celebrate something, and they just absolutely did me. It's worth a watch. Yeah, okay. I was like, what's happening? And then still did it.
We'll repost that part of the promo. I'll find out for the promo.
But yeah, like I say, as part of trying to separate ourselves, like the social media allows us to demonstrate, I suppose, to clients what we're about, but also for attracting staff. Like, it's hard to attract staff in our industry, so having the Instagram and TikTok of showing, like I say, we are just human beings in the background allows us to attract those amazing people.
Love that. I'm going to say, if you're an amazing person and you're looking to be an accountant, or you're an accountant, Gravitate Digital company, definitely.
Sam, thank you so much, mate. Awesome.
Love that.
Thank you for today. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Sam. Appreciate it, mate. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for joining us on Fit That's Podcast. See you next one.
See you soon.